This interview is with Larisa Makuch, who is a pro's pro. She's based out of Toronto, Canada, and she works with people to help them realize their dreams. She has a range of techniques to use, and I just found it fascinating, and I really appreciated her sharing all this information with us. She's worked with Tony Robbins and Bob Proctor, and it really shows in her mastery of this. Enjoy this interview. Larisa Makuch is a top-notch speaker, world-class results coach, and inspirational author. With decades of experience, Larisa helps people transform their lives quicker than they could have ever imagined. Larisa blends science and psychology to help you get the results you've been looking for. She does this in ways that are both simple yet profound. Larisa is a certified consultant with Bob Proctor and the Proctor Gallagher Institute, master results coach, master of timeline therapy, trainer of neuro-linguistic programming, and head of a neuro-linguistic programming institute. Larisa is a person to go to for more passion, profits, or results in your life. She has helped others realize their most cherished goals and live their biggest dreams. Larisa can do the same for you. I'm so honored to have her here today. She does purposeful work that really matters by changing lives in an impactful way. What a treat to be able to have you share what people can do to move beyond their limitations and achieve meaningful goals.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
You're welcome. And let's just start off into the first question here. The first question is, how did you get to where you are professionally, and what is your backstory?
Okay, I can give you the long version and I can give you the condensed version. So maybe I'll go somewhere in between with this. I think like a lot of us, I felt really awkward and really uncomfortable when I was in high school. I would study a lot. I would go to band. I would do things to avoid talking to people because I didn't feel good about myself on the inside. And one of the things that I came to learn is that we are all humans and everything we believe is true. And this is something that I came to learn and accept much later on. But at the time, it was a really, really crazy situation. And I think we've all been there at one point or another. And so I remember I was being driven home by a boy in one of my classes. And this is right before I got my car, and he's giving me a ride home. And we had the most awkward ride. Like it was nice in class. We always communicated because we were talking about math. But when he was giving me a ride home, I didn't know what to talk to him about. I didn't know what to say. And it felt a little strange. And I'm like, this cannot be normal because I see other people having conversations. And when I thought about it, I realized I just didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to ask a question. I didn't really know how to have a conversation. And so it led me into a library. I've been in a lot of libraries in my day. And I picked up a book called How to Start a Conversation and Make Friends. And that book it was old school. It was so basic, but it literally transformed my life because it gave me some words. It gave me a starting point. It gave me something to start with. And a week or two later, we were again in the car. He was giving me a ride home because he lived in my neighborhood. And I was able to ask him a couple of questions, and the experience was completely different. Was it different for him? Maybe, maybe not. But I know for me, when I started gaining the tools and the understanding of really being empowered to make choices, that was like the very first turning point in my life. I got the knowledge, I got the information so I could feel better about a situation, and it transformed my experience, and I hope it transformed his. At this point, I don't know if it did. But it really led me on a journey of self-discovery and self-development. And so I had never really understood what the world of personal growth was. I thought it was something that people did that were crazy and needed a lot of help. And I'm like, I'm not that crazy. I don't need this help. And I got involved in my first career was actually in financial services. And when you're in a sales position or work in that kind of industry, personal growth is a really big component, whether you're in real estate, whether you're in financial services, whether you're in sales of any kind. Personal growth is a really great way to get yourself focused, to lift yourself up, to keep yourself moving forward in spite of obstacles. And I rejected it at first. And so I was introduced to a couple of speakers that I secretly admired, and I got my hands on some cassette tapes and I would listen to them in my car in secret. And I realized that when I did what they said, it worked. It's amazing. When you listen to information and you do what they say, it can actually work. And so I started becoming really engrossed in this world and in the world of personal development. I got out of the closet with my personal growth. I started reading books. I'd attended seminars. I listened to CDs. I listened to cassette tapes until I got a CD player in my car back then. And it just snowballed from there. And I ended up leaving that industry, but every other business that I worked in or that I ran or that I created, every kind of teaching position I held, I always incorporated the things that I was learning, because I could see things in students that I was working with or in people I was working with where they were having challenges that at one point I had had. And often it's the world is a funny place. They bring you people that they bring you people that are meant to be. I truly fundamentally believe that we are all connected. We are all brought together for a reason, whatever that reason is. I don't always know at the time, and we never know at the time, but you can connect Steve Jobs says you can connect the dots looking backwards, not necessarily looking forwards. And so when you start to hone your skills, you can begin connecting those dots in the moment and a lot sooner. But looking backwards, I noticed everyone that came my way was there for the perfect reason and at the perfect time. And so I literally used the personal growth for myself and for the students I worked with or for the people I worked with in my businesses. And a few years ago, I actually enrolled in Bob Proctor's coaching program. And so I've worked with lots of people all over the world. I've traveled to Fiji. I've traveled all over the US. I've traveled to Europe. I've traveled to South America studying with masters of their field. But when I was really introduced to Bob, this is where light bulbs went off in a completely different way. And it was almost like he had taken all of these things that I'd been studying in different places and literally created he handed me a roadmap to put it all together. It's like the pieces of the puzzle really started to fit, and they made sense on a conscious level, but also really in my heart. And so that got me curious, and I applied. There was an opportunity to work with Bob, and I applied to become a consultant. And so I'm officially a certified consultant with him because I loved what he was sharing and the difference it had made in my life. And then that led me and snowballed me to the world of neuro-linguistic programming. And I ended up completing all my training. And so now I really blend both worlds, because neuro-linguistic programming is something that had always been in my life. I just didn't know how to really incorporate the tools till I got trained. And so that's where I'm at now. I love the neuro-linguistic programming, and I thought it was a beautiful marriage of the two and really bridging the gap for people. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that does. I just love how you tied in literally, it sounds like decades there of putting, like your young experience and then working with students and playing with things, seeing what works with you, what doesn't work, all that. And just keep refining it and getting better and better. And then getting a mentor like Bob Proctor, seeing the roadmap. I mean, that's just amazing. What an amazing experience.
I'm a student for life. I will be a student for life. And I think that's all we can do ultimately, is really keep expanding and growing ourselves so that we can serve others to the best of our capacity.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Larisa. All right, the next question we have is, you've worked with a lot of people as a therapeutic practitioner. You've helped them break through negative mental barriers and step forward with confidence in their life. What is something that people, they get stuck on, or they don't want to get stuck on, or when they get stuck, how can they get unstuck? What's some things that they could do?
So when they get stuck, what they can do?
Yeah. The first thing is, let's just back up. The first thing is they don't want to get stuck. Okay. So how can you avoid getting stuck? And then the second part of it is, if you do get stuck, unfortunately, how can you get unstuck, or how can you get past that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think the fact is we are human. We are human. And as humans, life will throw us curveballs. Life is here to happen for us, not to us. Ultimately, we have the capacity to be, do, or have anything we want. And it can be fun, it can be joyful, and it can be easy. And things happen that are ultimately out of our control. And I think one of the greatest things you can do personally to troubleshoot all of that and really avoid the roadblocks in the first place is raise your awareness and get to know how you operate and operate within universal law. So two parts to that: get to know how you operate and operate within universal law. So when you get to know yourself, you have, I'm going to simplify this. We're not going into full neuroscience here, but for all intents and purposes, you have a mind, and we're going to say this is your mind, and you have a conscious mind and you have an unconscious mind. So the conscious mind is responsible for about 4% of the results you get. And the unconscious mind is responsible for about 96%. Depending on what school of thought, there's slight variations, but the unconscious is responsible for so much of your programming, for so many of your behaviors, for so much of how you show up in the world. And often when we go to school, we are highly trained to use our conscious mind. We're trained to study using our conscious mind. We're trained to learn using our conscious mind. We're trained to observe using our conscious mind. And while that gets us ahead to a certain point, it really is the power of the unconscious that will move us forward in life. That's where our belief system lies. That's where our perception of time lives. That's where our entire value system is set. The unconscious mind is able to remember every single event and occurrence and experience that's ever happened to you in your life. Now, there's so much, we are inundated with information, like 11 million or billion, can't remember which one right now.
A lot.
I think it's 11 million bits of information per second, like a ton of information. And we can only process like 128 bits per second, plus or minus 7. And when we look at what we can do consciously versus what we ingest unconsciously, there's a lot of things that happen in the mind that allow us to move forward. Now, I'm not saying this for you to go study all this and memorize what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's a lot of things that happen between your world and how you perceive it and what your experience is. And you are not responsible for what happens to you. You are responsible at a certain point for how you manage it and how you deal with it. And when you have good strategies, when you have good tools, when you have good resources, you can generally more effectively deal with things a lot better. You're not going to freak out when something goes wrong. You're going to look at it logically and go, okay, how can we come to a solution? You're not going to go, oh my goodness, I have no money. What am I going to do? You're going to be like, how can I go find more money for whatever opportunity I have? You're not going to, schools are shut down due to a pandemic. I've got kids at home. That's a reality for a lot of people. You can let that hinder you, or you can look at the opportunities and you can actually create it into something really positive. It's your perception of the situation and it's how you show up to it. So how can you use the pandemic and the potential inconvenience of having children at home to accelerate your business, to become more effective, to perhaps teach or educate your kids in a whole new way, to connect to your family in ways you've never done before? And when you have that level of awareness and you really know yourself and you know how to work with the conscious and the unconscious mind, that is a lot easier. Now, when you understand how the laws of the universe work, we have many laws of the universe. Some are primary, some are secondary. I think this community is probably aware of the law of attraction. So it's a big hot topic out on the internet and everywhere. Well, the law of attraction is actually a secondary law. People think, oh, law of attraction, yeah, it's great. But when you really look at how the universe is constructed, the law of vibration precedes the law of attraction, because everything is energy and everything vibrates. Everything's got a vibrational frequency. And you can't attract something, right, along the same vibrational frequency until you really understand how vibrations work. So how to elevate your vibration, how to shift it. So when you really start to deconstruct the laws of the universe, they're based on physics, they're based on theology, and they often say the same things in just different ways and with different language. And fundamentally, when you understand how they work, that's when you can start working with them instead of against them. So I have a lip gloss, and I'm sure you are fully aware of something called the law of gravity. Now, if I drop this, what will happen?
It'll fall.
You know, I'm in Toronto and you are,
I'm in Oregon.
and that is opposite ends of the country. We're like a 3-hour time zone difference away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's going to fall here. Now, if you took a pen or a lip gloss or something, it would fall in your neck of the woods. And if you were in, let's say, Australia or New Zealand, it would fall down there too. And if you were in Europe or in Asia, it would fall there too. Because laws work with people all over the world the same way, in a predictable way. And so when you really understand, and I love the law of gravity because you can see it. Most of the time when you're working with the law, you don't understand it because it people think it's a little hoo-ha. But when you actually understand the science behind it, and when you understand how it works, and when you can see it, it makes it more tangible. And so that's really where that level of awareness comes. So when you're stuck, one of the best things, I think, so that was part one of the question. So part two is, when you do find yourself stuck, what do you do to move forward? Well, when you're stuck, you've got to realize that what you focus on expands. And you want to focus on what you want and not on what you don't want. It is as simple as that. Now, simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. Simple doesn't mean easy because we are trained and conditioned to just look at what's in front of us and respond to that. It's our conditioning. It's not how it is. It's how we think it is, because everything we believe is true. Everything I believe is true. Everything you believe is true. Now, what might be true to you might not be true to me, and what might be true to me might not be true to you. But everything each of us believes is true to our model of the world. So when it comes to what you focus on expands, and focus on what you want, oh, it sounds so easy. Who cares? It's just so hard. Well, there's good and there's bad. And good and bad, would you say, are opposites?
Well, I've been reading a lot of stuff on Bruce Lee and yin yang and stuff, and so they're saying that there's things are really not opposites, just a continuum.
Right. So good and bad, they seem opposite, like high and low, but when you look at it, it's a polarity. Good and bad are actually along the same spectrum, along the same continuum. We perceive them as good or bad, but nothing is good or bad, only your thinking makes it so. And so when things are apparently bad, when you focus on the good, it's going to start drawing the energy to the opposite pole. So the law of polarity states everything has an opposite. And it has, when something is really bad, it has the equal and opposite potential for something just as good. So sometimes the worst things in our lives have the best possible outcome. And when I look back at my life, I know the worst things that have ever happened to me have been my greatest learning opportunities. They have been my greatest blessings, and they've been amazing. At the time, they didn't feel so good. And I didn't recognize that at the time. I didn't have that awareness. But when you start to learn how to work with the laws, a bad situation comes up, you go, oh, well, what good can come of this? How can I find the good in this situation? You're going to start shifting your perspective on things, and all of a sudden your day's going to get better. You're going to treat people nicer. You might even get unstuck, because instead of focusing on the problem, you will focus on the solution, which is the opposite end of the coin. So that is what I would do to get unstuck. Again, easier said than done when you haven't practiced. So it can take time. It can also happen really quickly when you make a decision to do that.
Okay, so it can vary from person to person based on how much they, like the law of gravity. I could resist it, or I could just say it's a fact, it's a truth, and I go with it. So is it
Yeah.
the same kind of thing with this, whereas people, if they embrace it, if they just see the truth in it, then they have faster results? So if they're more kind of resisting and saying, I don't know, it's just, is that for me?
Every person is different, but the more aligned you can get, and the more aligned you are with your truth, with your goals, with your intentions, with your desires, the faster they come. It's just we tend to live out of alignment with those things because we don't have the awareness. So the more aligned you get, the more you bridge that gap.
All right, I love that.
So it can happen quickly, it can happen slowly. It depends. And sometimes it varies depending on the area of life or the category. So there can be a lot of variations with people, but ultimately when you work with the unconscious, it works a lot faster than working consciously. You can make a change to a limiting belief consciously. It just might take you 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Whereas when you tap into the power of the unconscious and literally rewrite your programming and like rewire your neurology, it can happen so fast and you can move on.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's the 96% you're talking about there.
96 is a bigger number than 4.
Yeah.
Even if you don't understand how it all works, 96 is bigger than 4. It has a lot more potential for fast work, effective work, quick results.
Yeah. The next question here, you've started touching on some of the different modalities that you use. One of them that I really found fascinating in looking at your material and watching your videos and everything was the timeline therapy. And could you explain how that works? And then there's like 7 major emotions that go with that.
Yeah. So timeline therapy is something I stumbled into. Didn't go looking for it. It came to me, and it is something I've really grown to love. It is actually a really powerful therapeutic process that evolved from hypnosis and NLP. And it was developed by Tad James, and he's developed in, I think, the 1980s. And what he did is he applied this therapeutic process to the concept that we store our memories in a linear manner. Sometimes the line twists and turns and goes in different directions, but we have an internal memory storage system. So we have our memories in a linear manner, and it's in an internal storage system. And timeline therapy is one of the most powerful processes to really change things on the inside so quickly, because it facilitates the elimination of negative emotions and also limiting decisions that we've made. And then the major negative emotions are anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, rage, and shame. And what it does is it produces long-term transformation much quicker than just therapy, because we actually go to the root cause of the problem. In your timeline, very first event, which when disconnected will cause the problem to disappear. And these painful emotions, they cause us to be stuck, and they cause us to create limiting beliefs, and they stop you from creating things that you want in life. And sometimes we are just in having negative emotions. If someone passes away, we should feel sad. We are humans. We are supposed to feel negative emotions. The thing is, we often feel negative emotions about things that are unnecessary. And when we do that, we hang on to that and we carry that with us. It's like putting bricks in a backpack. We carry that with us for our entire life. And then we make some bad decisions along the way, often due to other people's programmings. And so one of the advantages of timeline therapy is it enables you to release and clear gestalts. And these are chains of emotions rather than just one piece of the pie at a time. And when we work with these negative emotions, it's not just clearing those emotions, it clears a lot of things down the chain. So that clearing that one emotion from your world will actually, it clears it from that point to the past. You will still feel anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, rage, and shame in the future. Just the impact of it is a lot less. You're emptying that backpack of all the bricks, and then you might start filling it up again. It's just going to take you a lot longer to fill it. And moving forward, you'll start to become much more neutral when it comes to reacting or responding to things. Things that once bothered you don't seem to bother you anymore. And so that it works really great for even conditions like PTSD or trauma. And there are other modalities that do address these issues, but even in cases like that, you can eliminate some of those things very, very quickly within a matter of minutes or even an hour, depending on the person. And it's clear phobias. There's lots of things that we can work with in this regard, but when you really apply the timeline therapy, it's like magic. You just disattach and disengage from all these things that used to mean so much in a negative way, that pulled you back from the past. So it feels relaxing. It's curious. You're conscious. You're not under a hypnotic state. We're hovering above the line of consciousness, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing because it's proactive, it's productive, and you really get to learn about yourself through this process. It's not just let me dump my baggage. You really get to learn about yourself through this experience. It gives me goosebumps when I do it, and it's something I incorporate in my breakthroughs that I do with one-on-one clients. So we do timeline therapy as the basis for the breakthrough work, because we don't have to do as much neurolinguistic programming processes to clear all the baggage, because it just goes away with this one thing.
Wow, that's incredible. So if someone was interested in doing that with you, then that would be more of a one-on-one, like you're saying here, and then have faster results.
Yeah, we do one-on-one work. I also have a lot of other practitioners that I work with, depending on the person and depending on the situation. So we do this all the time. This is part of what we do on a regular basis.
Wow, yeah, I got to be honest with you. This is something new that I've learned from you. I didn't know about this, so it's really exciting that there's something like this out there. Because I'm thinking of friends who have like PTSD and other things like that, and how much that impacts their life. And if they could remove that, it would just be amazing. So I'm really grateful that you have that.
Mm-hmm.
My next question is kind of in line with this. Is what's something people seem to misunderstand about having a breakthrough?
What's something that people misunderstand about having a breakthrough? I think I'm going to rewind a little bit in my life back to my Tony Robbins days. So my husband and I, we've gone to all the Tony Robbins seminars. We've studied extensively with Tony. He was one of the people that we really mentored under for quite a few years, and we still keep going back for more because he's brilliant. But he would keep talking about a breakthrough, and change does happen in an instant. But like the breakthrough itself can happen so fast, and sometimes it takes a while to get to that point. You really have to be committed to the process and committed to the change. And when you do have that breakthrough, it is a sudden, a dramatic, and really, really big discovery or development in your life, because that breakthrough, it does happen so quickly. But when you're working on your own, sometimes you're desperately searching for this breakthrough and you can't find it because you're doing it consciously. And I remember when we were at the seminars, we were with a lot of other people, and it was great. Energy is going. We made some beautiful changes in our lives. We did transform so many parts of our lives. There were some other things that were underlying a lot of my issues, or what I called issues at the time, that I wasn't able to get over in the group setting, because there's a personalized element. And the fact is that we're all different, and we all have new ways and different ways of operating. And that environment is not conducive for me or for someone like me. Other people, you go there and they get the energy and vibe from people, and everything is different. For me, I made a lot of really great changes, I need the one-on-one work. I have seen the power of the one-on-one work and really honing in and lasering in on an individual person's root cause of their challenge or problem. Because ultimately, we all have problems that we think we have. But if you can name it, that ain't it. That's something I learned from Dr. Kim Redmond. If you can name it, that ain't it. Because what you think your problems are is at one level. When you dig below the surface, you have a root problem. It's like when you pick dandelions. If you don't pick you don't pick the root of the dandelion, if you don't pick all parts of it, it's going to grow back. And it's the same thing with this. So with a breakthrough, it's so, so key to surrender to the process. If you want your breakthrough, you can struggle to get it yourself, or you can go and get it with someone else and get it faster, get it more powerfully, because they're going to help you drill down to that root cause much faster than you can consciously do it yourself. And that's something we do through a lot of questioning and through a really strategic process. You just sit there and think and talk, and all of a sudden that's going to lead to so many changes after the fact. So I think the biggest misunderstanding is the breakthrough can happen very quickly. The precise moment of breakthrough will vary for people. When you try to do it yourself and you push to do it, you're working with resistance instead of allowing it to happen. And when you surrender to the process and allow someone to help you, it will be faster, smoother, easier, more joyful, sometimes a lot of tears. You may not always like the practitioner during all times, but you will get the result you're looking for. And it will just be so much easier and better moving forward. Often when people come to us from a neuro-linguistic programming perspective, they come after they've exhausted so many possibilities. And because of the tools that I'm able to use to help clients make changes really fast and permanently, they experience those changes really fast and permanently beyond what they've done, struggling in different modalities for a long, long time. And so a lot of the coaching modalities or some of the therapeutic modalities, they work on a more conscious level, and it's where the unconscious is involved. That's where the greater impact is going to be.
Yeah, it seems so counterintuitive to the key to this is surrendering. And I find that fascinating. But when you do that, it's like instead of fighting up the river, you're kind of flowing with it. And
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome.
The next question we have is, you talk about the knowing doing gap and how to solve that you want to study and then do. Can you explain that a little bit for people who are not familiar with it? Because I found it to be really fascinating.
Okay, so knowing doing gap is something I learned from Bob Proctor. This is one of his concepts. And ultimately, there is a gap between where you are and where you want to be. Where you are and where you want to be. And there is, if it's a little gap, you can bridge it with less effort. If it's a bigger gap, there's a bigger jump. If it's a bigger gap, there's a bigger jump. Ultimately, people know what they need to do. People go looking for information. They're like, let me take another course. Let me take another seminar. Let me go find another training, because if only I could get this, then my life would be better. Well, ultimately, when it boils down to it, you know what you need to do. You're just not doing it. So let's say in a sales setting, for example, people are supposed to make calls, and many people don't make calls and have human contact and wonder why their business isn't growing. They know they're supposed to, they just don't do it. Solution is making the calls. So that's the gap. And we often have these things in our lives. I know I should save money, so I have money available for opportunities I want in the future. I just don't do it because, something shiny comes up and I just want it. So you know you're supposed to do certain things and you should do certain things, and you just don't get around to it. Now, the thing is, when you bridge this knowing doing gap, consciously we know what to do, yet we're still not doing it. It's because we're using the conscious awareness to attempt to dictate an unconscious process. The reason we're not doing it is something deeper. It's that below the surface unconscious mind stuff that we were talking about. So most of the reasons for not doing things are unconscious. And when it comes to bridging the knowing doing gap, there's ultimately two parts to it. So the first part is belief. And that belief happens on an unconscious level. You've got to bridge, you've got to build the belief within yourself and have that deep under the radar. Or even though you know you should do it, if you don't believe you're going to do it, how much incentive are you going to have if you don't think you're going to be successful? So step one to bridging the knowing doing gap is belief. Step two is taking action. You literally just have to take action, whether you like it or not. There is neurology that needs to be built for certain things to take effect in our bodies. And sometimes that neurology, when you don't have a skill, you literally have to build the skill. And you can keep learning and developing the skills that you need for anything in your life well into your 90s. Research shows that brain function and development, it exists well into your 90s. All you have to do is keep using it. And your like little baby neurons will be created when you actually do things that are new, when you learn things that are new. So you've just got to get up off your butt. Tom Hopkins said, Goya, get off your arse and just do it. Now, you can bridge the knowing gap just with the action. You can have enough action to bridge the knowing doing gap. You're going to work really hard. You're going to get really tired. You're going to struggle, but you can do it. You can go make 200, 300 calls a day and eventually it'll work. Maybe you can do it. You can just save all your money, or you can maybe not eat anything except for those ramen noodles and you will save money. But there's going to be a struggle because something's going to come up. So in order to make the knowing doing gap work faster and better and more effectively, that's where the belief comes in. Because when you have the belief that you can do it, and then you have the actual doing of it, you're going to start to really see those results shine. You got to have both parts, because if you don't work together, you're just going to struggle. You can believe all you want, but believing on the sofa isn't going to get you the results. You got to do both. So you study, you learn something, you go do something. You study, you go feel better about yourself, then you go do something. Then you learn something else, then you go do something. So it's bridging that gap. You study, do, study, do, study, do. Maybe that's studying your industry. Maybe that's studying yourself. Maybe that's working with other people and getting feedback. Study can mean a lot of different things, but that's how that really fits in that knowing doing gap.
And do you find that it works best to have people write down stuff, like when they're studying and doing, like to monitor that, or just studying and doing itself, or do you tie any kind of written thing to it?
I did an entire lunch and learn on, I did an entire talk on this. It was like 30 minutes on this topic. Might have been 15, 30 minutes on this entire topic. But ultimately, study can mean different things. It can be mentoring, it could be reading, it could be watching a video, it could be taking notes, it could be really thinking through a process, it could be asking yourself questions, like really productive questions. Studying, when I use the word studying, it can mean a lot of different things. It just means acquiring a certain level of knowledge. And often people in the study loop get caught studying, and they never want to go do. Because it's fun to study. You feel empowered when you're studying. You feel on top of the world. And then you're like, oh, I wonder why nothing's happening in my business. Oh, I wonder why, I'm happy when I'm here, but then I go back to my family and things aren't quite the way I imagined when I was like daydreaming. So there's the element of studying and then the application of it. So studying can mean it really will be different for each person. And I think using a variety of modalities to study is key. Because if you just get stuck in the one that you're used to, you're going to miss a whole lot of other opportunity to give you feedback and give your and feed your neurology from a different perspective and really limit yourself. So I would say expand your awareness and go have fun.
You've already mentioned about working with Bob Proctor and in your extensive work with Tony Robbins. With all the mentors and the teachers you've had, what is one takeaway from them that you haven't, yeah, I know you've already shared a bunch, but one that you haven't shared that you think people would find valuable?
I think one of the common threads through all of the most incredible people I've worked with is that this world is full of infinite possibilities, and you have infinite potential. And that might sound a little airy-fairy, but it really is true. Insight without action is not power. And essentially, we are spiritual beings in a physical body. So this is getting into more spiritual realms of possibility, but I found the higher and higher I would step in my learning, the more of the elite programs that I would become a part of. This is where the spiritual aspect really took form. When we were studying and we were learning and we were brand new, we really focused on the concrete, the tactical things, and then getting into a strategic and a planning mode and seeing the vision. But when you really step up into the study, I'm using the study again, when you step into the study and really start to get in with the higher thinking groups, or the people that have had a lot more experience with this work, there is a huge spiritual component. And I'm not going to say religious, because religions vary. But all religions have a spiritual component, whatever you call them. And we are essentially spiritual beings in a physical body because we are connected at a higher level. And we have individual bodies, right? I have a body, you have a body, but we are connected through energy, through vibrations, even through this computer. We are all connected with each other through energetic vibrations. And when you really look up at it from a higher level, when you think of even the mind is not the brain. A lot of people think the brain is the mind, but the brain is a tool. The idea of the mind is one universal concept that we can all tap into. And if you think about intuition, I think this demonstrates what I'm trying to say the best. When you think about intuition, if someone comes to mind and you pick up the phone or text them, they're like, I was just thinking about you. It was the craziest thing. Or sometimes, even this week, several times, I've literally thought about someone or put an intention out there. I picked up my phone and I'm like, oh, there's a message from them. Oh, this is the answer I was looking for. I read on a daily basis. Sometimes I'll pick up a book and it's one that I haven't read for a while, and I'll just open a random page and I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I needed to see. This is exactly what I needed to read. And everything happens for a reason, but when you really allow yourself, it's part of that surrendering, when you start to really notice how the answers are coming into your world, how your intuition works. Everything is very deliberate. Everything is universal. Everything is connected. We are those spiritual beings in a physical body. And that was something that I didn't understand at the beginning. They'd make us do meditations. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm bored. Like, when is this going to end? That was at the beginning of my journey. I didn't understand it. And it took a long time for me to get to the point of really accepting it and appreciating it for what it was. And getting to the point of understanding what they were talking about. Part of me was curious, and part of me was like, oh, this isn't productive. Why are we wasting our time doing this? And now I look back and I understand, and I just realized I wasn't in that place of accepting that. And I honor that, because we are at the perfect place at the perfect time. Wherever you are, I think is perfect for you. It's just when you know that you want something and you may not have the words, or you have a feeling, or you have an intention, the fact that you even thought of that, or maybe you see something in someone that you were like, I wish I could have that too. Wow, they're traveling first class. I've never traveled first class. I'd like to sit at the front of the plane. I'd like to go to a 5-star resort. When you have that thought, Maxwell Maltz, he's the author of Psycho-Cybernetics, he says, when you entertain a thought, you actually have the capacity to fulfill it. And we often don't give ourselves the credit or even think that we have that ability. It's like, oh no, it's for them. We have this thought, oh no, it's for them. We step aside and let our current belief system and our current programming run our lives. But when you really understand that you have infinite potential, this world is full of infinite possibilities. You can really be, do, and have anything you want. When you work with an abundance versus a scarcity mindset, even the idea of infinite possibilities, like let's say I have a pie. What's your favorite pie?
We'll go with apple pie.
Apple pie. Okay, I love apple pie. I don't bake a lot, but I have made a few dozen apple pies in my days. So I've got this really great apple pie, and it's like fresh out of the oven. You can smell the apples all over the house. You're just like, oh, and just like that hint of cinnamon, you're like, oh my goodness, this is going to be the most delicious apple pie. I cannot wait to just cut into it with my fork. And you see it come out of the oven, and it's just got a little bit of steam, and it's the perfect brown on top. And you can taste this apple pie before it even comes to you. And you and I are going to split this apple pie. You're getting a little excited, right?
I can taste it right now.
Okay. Well, then your kids come home. And now you're like, damn, I'm going to have to share this apple pie with them. And I really wanted half the pie. I don't want a little piece of pie. I want the big pie. That's what we think on a regular basis. When you know the world is full of infinite possibilities, you'll be like, oh, my kids came home. Great. We can all have some pie. Because look, another one just came out of the oven. Or, whoa, the pie just got bigger and now there's enough for everyone and we don't have to have less. We often think that when things happen, or when people come into our lives, or when opportunities change, we have to hold back from what we want, or we have to cut our vision short. That's not how it works, because this universe is abundant. And when you realize that, you realize the pie just gets bigger, or another one just appears, because that is what infinite possibility is all about. And then you don't mind when your kids come home and that apple pie is just coming out of the oven, because you can share with them and you still have just as much as you were going to have before.
This question, in the beginning, when you're talking about being a spiritual being, I was thinking of Wayne Dyer and how a lot of his work, transformed over time to be more spiritual. And the other thing I was thinking about was, how hard is it for people to have that infinite mindset? I mean, is that something that, is it like the decision where you snap, and it happens, or is it, how do people do that?
Ultimately, everything comes down to that moment of decision, because it's, Tony Robbins says, it's in the moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. It comes back to awareness. If you start raising your awareness, the fear you once had will turn into faith, because according to the law of polarity, fear and faith are on the opposite poles of the spectrum. Fear and faith are the same thing, but we often think of blind faith. And sometimes when you're new to a study, you're like, oh, I just have to have faith. Oh, I'm going to have faith. I wonder why something's not working. God, are you speaking to me? Well, it's not about having blind faith. It's about really having faith based in understanding. Because when there is understanding, then you can make those decisions. Then you can start, everything becomes congruent. And it's literally a lifelong process, because my definition of everything today is going to change a month from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, based on my level of understanding, because I'm constantly expanding my level of understanding. The worst thing about travel for me is that I can't take all my books with me. That is the most difficult thing. I love being at home because I'm like, I need this book today. And especially when you go on a plane, you just can't always take a full extra suitcase of books with you, because you just don't know which one you're going to need that day. And for me, going back to the study, really connecting with people that are like-minded is so key and so powerful, because it fills my cup so I can help others fill their cup.
This next question here, I'm kind of maybe thinking about changing a little bit, because my original idea was to ask you, what's one thing I haven't brought up or talked about, but then you're talking about books. So I'm thinking maybe tied into a book you might recommend someone, or something that might be helpful to them.
Just one book?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
If you're like a book junkie like me, it's probably hard to pick one.
Oh,
Probably
I know. Oh,
a
let's
handful.
say some of the most common books I recommend
Okay.
are Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Sometimes that's a little dense to start with. So there are audio recordings. You can go on Google or download an audio. And I started with the audio recordings because the first time I went at this, I couldn't get through the book. That was 20 years ago, but I really got into the audio recordings. Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard is another great piece. Neville's got a lot of really great books. Some of them are more spiritual and religious than others, but he does have a really great body of work. Abraham Hicks, Ask and It Is Given, or Law of Attraction, or any of the Abraham Hicks books are fantastic. Science of Getting Rich is another great foundational piece. It's also a bit more intense. It's a bit more dense than some of the other books. One that I love that really bridges mindset, and a lot of people go on a journey to improve their mindset in order to improve their life and their wealth and their business. And so one of the books that I love is Bob Proctor's You Were Born Rich. And it talks about really the mindset of money and how you can bridge and build a beautiful relationship with it. And so it does have the financial piece in it, and it's also framed in a really great way to look at what you're like, who you are showing up in relation to that. So I love that book, and it's an easy read. That one's an easy read. We've got Psycho-Cybernetics is another great one.
Yeah, I've read Psycho-Cybernetics, and I read the Bob Proctor book, and they're both excellent.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I should stop yet. U Squared is another one I often recommend. It's about expanding your thinking and creating quantum leaps.
Is that a real thin book?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
I have it right
Okay.
here.
All right.
It's right by Price Pritchett. What else? That's all I can.
Okay. Oh, that's quite a list.
I've got a lot. I've got a pretty big list though.
Yeah, no, that's quite a list there.
I can do a whole list if you want my general recommended reading library.
We'll have a playful question here that if you could have a billboard and put anything on it, what would you have put on it, and why would you do that?
So, let it happen. Let it happen. And I'm going to just give you a little bit of backstory on this, because I was Bob Proctor. He's got wonderful people on his team, and I love going to conferences because I often get to. I mean, Bob is great. I love people that work with him. I love observing them. I love talking to them. I just feel he is so calm, and things on his team just seem to flow so fast and so easily, and at such a high quality. And so I was speaking with his daughter-in-law, who's in charge of the consultant division, Corey Kelly Proctor, and she was just talking about how sometimes she was getting a little worked up. And later, we were watching one of the live events online, and she was talking about an affirmation he had given her when she was like getting a little, oh my goodness, you're getting a little antsy. And she said this affirmation was, I'm so happy and grateful now that I let everything in my life flow free and easy. And I focus only on that which serves towards my greater good. And that totally hit home, because I feel like some of our energies are very aligned, right? We really want to work hard. We want to do a great job. And we also want to calm down. And at the time, calming down to speed up was a big theme in my life. And that was something that she had just gone through. She'd just gone through that, okay, I got to start breathing a little bit more, slowing down a little bit. And the whole idea of let it happen was huge. And I always write LET in all caps. I'm so happy and grateful now that I let everything in my life flow free and easy. And I wrote that down like hundreds of times a day. I wrote that affirmation over and over. I would say it over and over. I assigned it to my clients. I still give it to so many clients. That is one of my staple affirmations, because when you let things happen is when you surrender. It's when you decrease resistance. And often we try to make things happen. There's a lot of challenges in even the word. You can't try to do something first and foremost. You either do it or you don't. And make things happen is so effortful. And when you let things happen, you literally allow them to come to you. It's a state of allowing, and that works much better with universal law. It's a lot easier, and it has a better outcome. And it's not something that we're used to doing. So if I had a billboard, I would say, let it happen.
Very nice. I really like that answer there. That's very, just the whole idea about surrendering, that's really a big takeaway I'm taking away from this conversation. Just the power of that, and not resisting it. Because I got to be honest, I was a basketball coach for many years, and one of my things was make it happen. And so I was probably going against everything here.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir. I was make it happen forever.
Yeah.
And it took a while to rewind. It's almost, when my son is 3, and sometimes he gets frustrated, and we don't want to say no. We're really working on not saying no, but reframing things and flipping it to a positive. So when he gets into these 3-year-old zones, we're like, oh, I can't do it. I blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, stop. Let's rewind and start again. So sometimes we'll like literally, let's rewalk to the bathroom and let's start again. And the whole idea of rewinding really does help, because you rewind a little and you can rewrite your story.
No, that's nice.
It's so silly, and it actually works for us too. It's not just for 3-year-olds. Like when we start thinking of some of the ways we work with kids, I've worked with kids for a long time now, 25 years now. And when you really work with kids, there's a different way of thinking. They have this innocence and this childlike imagination and way of approaching the world. And when you can start tapping into that yourself, you might actually you're likely to get way better outcomes. We just forget because we think we have to do things a certain way. You don't have to do anything. You choose to do things a certain way. And when you allow things to just happen, that's when the magic comes. And magic is a really good word. We forget about the magic in our lives. We forget about the world. We forget about the possibilities. You can't create infinite possibilities if you don't believe in magic. And when you look at kids, they believe in everything, because that conscious mind, they don't have a conscious filter until the age of 7 to 9. Everything just gets poured into their unconscious, and everything is true. Whether you're driving in a boat and see a jaguar in the ocean, like that could be true. Or whether you're swimming from your bed to the bathroom, like that is so true when you work with a child. And we forget about the power of imagination and the power of just letting it be, seeing what happens when you let.
Thank you. The last question we have here is, what's the most important thing you've learned in your life, and what was your life like before that, and then what has it been after that? And maybe you've already covered this, because you've covered a whole lot of things.
I think, yeah, this is one of those other ones. Just one thing. I would say something I haven't covered.
Okay.
That does tie things together is take imperfect action. Perfectionism never leads to a good outcome. And when you take imperfect action, you will find a better way. You can't get going until you get going. And you've got to just be willing to do it and build wings on the way down. So often it's that study, do, study, do, study, do. Just start doing and keep improving along the way, because you're never going to be ready. You're never going to have the perfect circumstances, and the perfect circumstances will come after you've done it 100 times. You will be ready after you've done it 100 times, maybe 200 times, maybe 300 times. You will finally feel confident when you get bored. When something gets boring is when you finally get good. And that's when people want to give up, right as they're finally getting good.
I'm so grateful for you sharing your time today and helping people with all the information. I personally have found this just amazing. Just some of the things that they say that if you can explain it to someone in an elementary age, then it's something that's genius and profound. And some of the stuff that you've gone over today with awareness and going with the flow, I really treasure this. And I'm sure people are going to want to get in touch with you. And what is one of the, maybe have multiple ways, what's a good way for them to get in touch with you?
So the best way for people to get in touch with us is I actually have a Facebook group, a private Facebook group called Unleash Your Opulence. And we run monthly events in there, sometimes every 6 weeks. And we actually have Unstoppable You workshops that we're running at this point. And we want to give back. We want to create a community and cultivate that community. So Unleash Your Opulence is the best way. If you just apply to the group, you can even write a note that you came from you or from wherever, because I think that is going to give you a community of people to really jive with. That's going to bring you a community that can help elevate your energy and help elevate you. When you elevate yourself, that has a world of possibilities. And when you just don't, you don't. So that's the best way. You can also email hello@larisamakuch.com. And those are the two best ways if you want to get in touch with us. If you are interested in learning about more of what we do, we do work one-on-one and also in group settings. And I can't say one is better for a person than another. It really depends on the individual person. And I'm happy to offer a 30-minute call to really learn more about you and what you need and how we can help you, because there is no cookie cutter approach, and you are a human, you are an individual, and you are on your own path, which is absolutely perfect. And if some of the work we do doesn't fit, I promise I am a student. I know a lot of people, I know a lot of things, and I refer often. So if I can't help you, I am 99% sure I can find somebody or a solution that can.
Well, thank you, Larisa. We'll have all those links down below so people can access that. And I'm just really impressed with you and very grateful that you took the time. And I'm sure that everyone is feeling the same way I am. And thank you very much.
And thank you for having me on here.